The jury is present and seated. Everyone else may be seated at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, welcome back. Did anyone have any discussions about the case, do any research about the case, or was anyone exposed to any reports about the case during the last break? By show of hands. Let the record reflect there are no hands. Thank you all. We're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to turn to the cross-examination. Ms. Holt, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Good afternoon, Dr. Lazarou. How are you?
Good afternoon, Attorney Holt. I'm doing all right.
Now, you've had an opportunity to work on criminal cases in the forensic area, as you stated on cross, and it's primarily in the Fifth Circuit, which is Ocala, the Sixth Circuit, which is Pinellas Pasco, and then, of course, the 13th Circuit, which is Hillsborough County, correct?
Yes.
And you've been doing that probably since about 2008, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And since approximately 2008, your criminal case work with Hillsborough County State Attorney's Office has probably brought you in the general area of about $480,000 in income. Is that correct?
You know better than me.
Okay, so we recently took your deposition and we covered these things. So if you don't mind just answering the question, and you just recently testified in another court proceeding, so if you don't mind just answering the question. That's correct. We've covered this with you.
You have said that before. Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but I believe what you're telling me.
Okay. And overall, as a matter of fact, with the state of Florida testifying for the state attorney's offices, you've made over $700,000 since 2008, correct?
Yes.
All right, now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about your CV, which of course is your background and some of your work. If I understand your CV correctly, and do you have a copy of that, or do you need a
No,
copy?
that's in my mind.
That's in your head?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think you worked at the Tampa VA hospital for about 3 years, 2004, July to about June of 2007. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
All right. And then from July of 2005, which would have been kind of a layover, to May of 2007, you also worked at the Bay Pines VA hospital. Is that correct?
Yes.
So about 2 years.
Yes.
And that's something that when you're a resident, they allow you to do. It's kind of like you called it, I think, moonlighting. Is that correct?
Yes.
In 2006, July to about 2006 of December, so for about 6 months, you were working with Premier Community Healthcare. And again, this kind of goes through that same time period that we're talking about, 2004 to 2007, correct?
Correct.
All right. And basically at that time, you were seeing Medicaid patients, and you only stayed there for about 6 months because you said that you wanted to see patients for a lot longer than they were willing to have you see them. Is that correct?
That's one of the reasons, yes.
And then you also worked at Union Correctional from March of 2007 to April of 2007, which is about a month. Is that correct?
Yes, I work there during different breaks and holidays in my schedule, yes.
And when you talk about being the chief psychiatrist for the Department of Corrections, what you're really talking about is you're the chief psychiatrist for one of the dorms that's there. They have an overall person that oversees all of their medical and psychiatric needs, and you would have just been the chief psychiatrist for a dorm, correct?
Correct.
All right, and then in 2007, again, for about a month, you worked at Zephyr Hills Correctional, and there you left because you had documented that you thought one of the inmates was having sex with a guard, and that you felt like someone had hired someone to harm you. Is that correct?
I was told that, yes.
Okay. And then from May of 2007 to June of 2007, again, you worked at the Polk County Jail. That's again for about a month. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were covering at that time for someone's maternity leave.
Yes.
Okay. And then again, February of 2008, you go to Union Correctional again. Is that
Yes.
correct?
I toggled between those units, yes.
And again, when you say you were chief psychiatrist there, again, it was for a dorm where someone else was overseeing the entire complex.
Correct, yes.
And then the same thing in May of 2008, again for a month, and you're saying that you're going back and forth to places, correct?
That's right.
All right. 2008 of May to June of 2008, again for about a month, you worked for Health Integrated, and there you were a consulting psychiatrist, and you were processing insurance and things of that sort. Is that correct?
I was doing insurance reviews, yes.
So at that point in time, you really weren't seeing patients or treating patients. Would that be fair to say?
No, that's not fair to say.
Okay. And I'm talking about only during that 1 month.
Which month was it?
Okay. May of 2008 to June of 2008, when you were the consulting psychiatrist, but your primary duties were insurance processing.
Right, but I was still in my fellowship at that time. So during the fellowship, I was treating patients for USF, but I was not in my private practice yet. Correct.
And then July of 2008 to January of 2010, you end up going for Health Integrated, and in your opinion there, you were terminated for whistleblowing because you didn't want to provide treatment to Scott and White's president's child. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
And you did not testify to that in the Dukes case?
I did not say that I did not want to provide care for this person. What I said was that the president of the company's child, they were trying to get him in a special clinic that was very expensive, but he hadn't really done the outpatient treatment, the lower level of treatment yet. And so that was why I was terminated, because I didn't approve this for a special person, because I didn't think he was a special person as opposed to every other person.
And you were operating under the whistleblowing at the time, is that correct?
I don't know what operating under the whistleblowing was, but
You did not use that terminology.
I did use that terminology, but I don't know what you mean by operating.
All right, you used the terminology in the Dukes trial that you in fact were terminated for whistleblowing. Let me ask it that clearly. Yes?
I believe, yes, that's the case.
All right, thank you. July of 2008 to April of 2014, you were at Tampa General Hospital, is that correct?
Yes.
About 5.5 years?
Yes.
Wasn't a regular theme. You were an attending psychiatrist, but they would call you if they needed you, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. I would teach residents and things there, yes.
And during that time period, you really couldn't work there in an employee type of status because you didn't have a board certification as was required, correct?
No.
Were you board certified from July of 2008 through April of 2014?
April 2014. Yes.
Okay. In March of 2009 to May of 2009, again, you were the chief psychiatrist for Dormant Union Correctional, and that's for 3 months, is that correct?
Yes.
Then March of 2010, you were working at Family Preservation Services as a psychiatrist, again, for Medicaid patients, that's for 1 month.
Yes.
And were you terminated there because you would not prescribe opiates and benzos to patients?
Yes, they were diverting medications, and I had been taking people off of those medications so they could not divert those medications, and that was decreasing the amount of patients that they were seeing in their clinic, so I was terminated, yes.
Now, at some point, and you can correct me in terms of the dates, but would it be fair to say that in about 2013 you started working with JSA Health Telepsychiatry as a telepsychiatrist?
That sounds right, yes.
And would you tell the jury and the court what that means in terms of telepsychiatry?
What I do in telemedicine, I still do that in my own practice now, but what that means is I was seeing patients over the computer. So they would have a clinic in an underserved area. They would have a staff there, and then I would be seeing the patients, and I would have a staff there, so if they needed labs or anything like that, that staff at the center could be doing that under my direction. Yes.
And you did that for JSA as well as for Healthcare Services, the Center for Healthcare Services, and North Texas State Hospital. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's correct.
North Texas State Hospital was for about 4 months, from October of 2013 to February of 2014. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the Center for Health Services would have been about June 2013 to March of 2015, a little bit under 2 years.
Yes, that's right.
Now, are all of these under the auspices of JSA by any chance?
Perfect, yes.
And then March of 2015 to September of 2017, again, telepsychiatry outpatient for the not guilty by reason of insanity clinic. That was for about 2.5 years. Does that sound correct?
Yes, it does.
And then in 2016, you worked for Health Integrated doing some behavioral health clinic education for about a month. Is that correct?
In 2016?
Sound right? March?
I actually did that for years. I just finished that. They hired me back after I had my first set of twins. I believe it was February 2015, and I worked there in that capacity up until recently when the company got sold to another company.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, in March of 2016, were you the behavioral health clinic education consultant for Health Integrated? Is that what your duties were during that 1 month?
Yes, then I moved up, yeah.
And then after that, would it be fair to say that you became the medical director, not doing insurance review or teaching or anything, but the medical director?
No, I was doing teaching, but I just moved up in terms of position to medical director instead of just a consultant, yeah.
Now, you also have what you call your private practice, which is under the name of La Coupe, and Is that right, LaCoupe?
LaCoupe, yeah?
LaCoupe, okay. June of 2008 to the present time, is that correct?
Yes,
All right, and you used to have a physical office, and now you primarily do your private practice through telepsychiatry, is that correct?
that's exactly
And if you
right.
have to see a patient, you do so at Hudson at your husband's sign company, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then in October of 2017, did you become engaged in some way with Tony Healthcare Consulting?
Yes.
And what did you do with them?
Well, I haven't really done anything with him yet. He hired me so that way I could do insurance reviews, but I haven't done any with him yet.
Now, you yourself in your personal in your personal psychiatry do not take insurance, is that correct? You do personal pay.
That's right, self-pay.
All right. And your practice is primarily like 75% telepsychiatry, 25% forensics, basically. Does that sound about right?
In terms of my time, yes.
Now, you also have both personal and business Facebook accounts. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And you happen to be someone who actually uses your Facebook accounts for business purposes. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
All right. And you know that this case started July 22nd of 2019, which was 9 days ago or so. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that?
You know that this case started on July 22nd of 2019, which was about 9 days ago. And you would know that because you would have received a subpoena from the state of Florida putting you on notice to be here, to be available for the 2 weeks that this case was set. Is that correct?
Yes, it's gone longer than I was subpoenaed for.
And on the night before jury selection, did you post a photograph of Ms. Nachtman dressed in orange with a statement that said, "Let's do it"?
Yeah, it was an article that my name was in. Yeah.
I'm sorry, let's do this.
Yes.
Does that sound where you posted it? Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you mean by that?
Start working.
And you realized that this case, you were advised that this case was going to have media attention. Is that correct?
I was.
Okay. And you then, yesterday, came into the courtroom, as an expert is allowed to do so, to listen to the testimony of Dr. Heidi and potentially Dr. Ewing,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And you posted again at that time that you were here and you were working. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you did the same thing again today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And you indicated on your direct testimony to Mr. Terry that you have a medical license. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And you understand it's a professional license, just as being a lawyer is a professional license, right? And yes?
I don't know what lawyers have. I just know we have those.
And you also practice in the area of psychiatry, so you actually realize that psychiatry is also a profession, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you realize that when you post to Facebook, that then that brings in and draws comments. Is that correct?
It does.
Now, one of the things that I want to ask you about is over the 3 days that you interviewed our client for approximately 14 hours, you had a tendency to interject your personal experiences in life into those interviews. For instance, you made a comparison to having had a roommate that was similar to Nicole Nachtman's experiences. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you had, in trying to talk to Nicole Nachtman about her poor self-esteem of herself and how she saw herself negatively, and how she felt about the liposuction and being 5'2" and weighing 132 pounds and all those things. You talked about that you've got sisters that are small, short, and they still got married. So you do have a tendency to do that, correct?
I don't understand what you mean. They still got
You have a
married.
tendency to interject your personal family life or your personal experiences into the 14 hours of the interviews with Ms. Nachtman.
I always do that. Yep, I do that generally. Yep.
So, and you would confirm that you did that also with Nicole Nachtman, correct?
Yes.
All right. Forgive me for having to ask this question, but unfortunately it is what it is. You yourself are a victim of sexual
Wait,
abuse.
time out, time out. He's standing for an objection. Legal, you may approach.
And again, forgive me for having asked the question.
Don't ever do that. Just
But
ask.
You're not going to forgive me, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying you don't have to qualify. Just ask me. I don't have any problem with any questions you ask me.
You yourself were a victim of physical and verbal abuse at the hands of your biological father,
Of my parents, yeah.
and both your parents.
Yeah.
And you, at the time that this occurred, and physical and or verbal occurred throughout your childhood and almost to the day that you finally left and went to college at the age of 18. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And during that time period, you did not report to law enforcement or to DCF or anything of that sort, correct?
That's correct.
And sometimes this verbal abuse and or physical abuse did not have outward signs to other people. Is that correct?
Certainly. Yep.
And you also did not seek any treatment during that time period. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And your parents also did not help you move from home to college. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you really didn't know that that was anything kind of out of the ordinary until you were at the college area and kind of saw everybody else's parents seem to be doing these things, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Let me now turn for a moment to trying to get a little bit of understanding of the organizations that you belong to. As we sit here today, are you a member of the American Psychiatric Association?
No.
And you are, however, a member of the American Medical Association. Is that correct?
No, the Florida Medical Association.
Florida Medical? Okay. Is that a voluntary kind of association where you pay a membership and you belong and you have, the qualification has to be that you're a doctor?
They're all voluntary, yeah.
So the American Psychiatric Association, however, is the one association that handles board certification, which you in fact have had in the past here in the United States.
I have been board certified, and I am board certified in the United States.
And they handle the board certification. Is that correct? That whole process. They regulate it.
The American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology does that. I don't believe that it's APA. I don't know that it is. I don't know their affiliation. I just know it's American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology.
The American Psychiatric Association is also who publishes the nationally recognized Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's the same book that Dr. Yui showed today, and you have, I think, the hard copy. Is that what you have?
Yes.
The hard copy.
It's the hard copy.
And just to give the jury a feel and an understanding, because I know that everybody has said what it is intended for, but if you don't mind
No problem.
following me.
No problem. Where are you?
If I'm shifting you over to page 5, the introduction,
Excellent.
just to make sure that you're comfortable with my questions.
Totally.
Now, the 5th edition, which is what we're looking at, what that was really a 12-year massive undertaking that involved hundreds of people working towards a common goal, and that was intended to come up with reliable diagnoses that were essential for guiding treatment recommendations, identifying prevalence rates for mental health servicing planning, identifying patient groups for clinical and basic research, and documenting important public health information. Is that correct? So we would have been in paragraphs 1 and 2.
Okay, you're blending things.
Well,
Yeah, I know it. I mean, I've never really read the introduction so you're introducing me to something new, but yes, that's what it says here.
well, I think you can agree with me that this is something that took a number of years, and it wasn't just put together by psychiatrists, but in fact it was everybody, a lot of people had input into this. And if you go to page 6, for instance, the paragraph right before a brief history says, many health profession and educational groups have been involved in the development and testing of DSM-5, including physicians, of which you are one,
Yes.
correct?
Check.
And I don't mean that you're one that provided input, but you're a physician.
Correct.
Psychologists, social workers, nurses, counselors, epidemiologists, statisticians, neuroscientists, and neuropsychologists, and in fact, patients, families of patients, lawyers, consumer organizations, and advocacy groups have all been able to participate in some way in providing feedback on mental disorders, correct?
Yes, that's what it says here.
All right. And so, well, you had no debate with that, correct? That was an opportunity that was afforded?
I don't have any idea. I didn't know that they talked with patients, and I don't know exactly how they participated in the development of this. I don't know if it was just through research or what, so I really don't know. It's just saying a conglomeration of people had helped to put this together, basically.
Right.
Okay.
Which is good. It's a wide array of people. It's all kinds of people that are affected by mental illness, by mental disorders, by treatment, all kinds of things. So that's a good across-the-board type of representation of the community. Fair enough to say? Okay.
Yes.
Now, the other thing is that it's very clear that you need clinical training and experiences in order to determine a diagnosis. Is that true?
Yes.
As it relates to your feelings about the American Psychiatric Association, I believe that you have testified previously, if I'm correct, that you believe that the American Psychiatric Association is built more around politics.
Yes.
Okay. Now, but at the same time, you certainly recognize that this is the book that is nationally recognized, and in fact, not only have you relied upon it, but so has Dr. Ewing, and so the reality of it is the book stands as really the #1 nationally accepted place to look for disorders, how to diagnose them, and how to treat them, correct?
Yeah, it's a guideline.
Now, and if you are also at this time one of two individuals who has filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois in March of 2019.
Wait, there's an objection. Approach.
Now, you previously testified that you administered the SIMS screening instrument to Nicole Nachtman, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you did this on the third evaluation of Nicole Nachtman, right at the very beginning of the evaluation, correct?
Yes.
Right, and as you indicated previously in your testimony with Mr. Terry, the instrument comes with very specific instructions that you, as the person who's administrating it, must follow. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a true-false test. Yes.
Okay. Well, the manual says that you have to read the instructions on the test to the person who you are administering the test to, correct?
I don't know that it says that. I don't mind that it says that. I did give their instructions, and that's it.
What you read to us earlier today on
Yes.
direct examination by Mr. Terry is the instructions that you, by the manual, are supposed to read to the person who is taking the test, correct? I'm sorry, the instrument.
I didn't know that I had to read it exactly like that, and I couldn't just use my own words. I didn't know that.
And yet you testified that you've administered this SIMS test to numbers. I can't remember now what you said. Significant numbers of individuals, correct?
Yes, in my fellowship, and I was trained in it. And at no time was I ever told that I had to read these direct verbatim instructions rather than just tell the person, this is a true-false test, answer true-false. If you have any questions, please let me know, and fill out the top part.
Doctor, are you testifying here today that you did not read the manual that is provided to you as a psychiatrist, as well as the SIMS instrument itself? You yourself are testifying today that you have not read the manual and you do not follow the instructions of the manual verbatim?
I bought
Is
the
that your
manual.
testimony, ma'am?
No, I bought the manual. I purchased the manual. I read the manual, but I didn't read the part in the manual where it said I had to read these exact instructions to say answer true and false. No, I did not do that.
Okay, so you didn't read the manual, and then
I did read the manual.
And you did not follow the manual's directions then, as it relates to the third evaluation of Ms. Nachtman when you administered the test. Is that correct?
I did not read this exact instruction to her. No, I
Matter
did
of
not.
fact, what did you say to her?
I said, Nicole, this is a true-false test. I want you to answer true and false. If you have any questions about this, please mark next to it so that way I'll know. and please fill out the top portion.
If I show you, and this is just to refresh your recollection, so
Sure.
please don't read it.
Let me just read to myself. Is that what you
Yes,
said?
that'd be great. Just read to yourself this part that I've highlighted for a moment.
Okay.
And see if that helps to refresh your recollection as to what it is that you actually said to Ms. Nachtman before you asked her to take the test.
This is part of what I said, but yes. There's more on another page. That's just one part. But
So I'll show you another page.
sure.
If I might again approach
You
Judge.
don't need to ask.
And so, Mr. Terry, it's pages 2 and 3, and I think you read both of them, but if you need to read it again, sir. Okay, does that help refresh your recollection as to what you literally actually said to her?
Yes, this is what I just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you would have said it's a true-false test. You just circle true or false. I want you to fill out this top information. It's got your name, the date of birth, your age, and then just go through and answer each of the questions. And she says yes. She said okay. And then you said, if you have any questions about one of the questions, you can ask me. But I also, when you have a question or you're like sort of on the fence or whatever, even though I want you to answer true or false, if you sort of have a question or are on the fence about something, just make some kind of note on the side, you know, like a little line or circle that numbers. Right?
Well, I don't know what that meant right there,
I don't
but
either.
but
But those were your words, correct?
yes, and I believe I continued a little bit too. Did I not continue or no?
Because I'm going to check this while I'm eating lunch.
Oh, okay.
That's where you fish. So those were the instructions you actually gave Ms. Nachtman on that day, which is certainly shorter and different than the instructions that the manual suggests. Correct?
I think it's actually longer than the manual.
Okay, we'll let the jury.
Okay.
So the SIMS is really a screening tool. It's certainly not a test. It's nothing more than a tool, and you're aware of that. Is that correct?
It's a screening tool. Yep.
Okay. And the SIMS has shown clearly to you that Ms. Nachtman was not malingering in either psychosis or in low intelligence, correct?
Correct.
And a part of what the manual says very clearly is that the SIMS is the appropriate instrument for the screening of malingered psychiatric and cognitive complaints in a wide range of contexts, subject to certain limitations, correct?
Yep.
And those limitations include that the diagnosis of malingering should not be based on SIMS findings in isolation, correct?
That's right.
And that if the results suggest malingering, based on whether it's the cutoff scores or perhaps what your observations were, then whoever's using this instrument needs to continue with extensive evaluation of malingering, correct?
Correct.
Right. And that should then be made, the determination of malingering should be made in the context of a comprehensive evaluation only where multiple sources of data have been used in order to corroborate the classification, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that would include things like the psychosocial and the psychiatric and medical history, correct?
Correct. That's correct. We're talking about corroborating
Do you
data.
have the manual with you by any chance?
No, I don't.
Well, I believe you were in here today when Dr. Ewing was testifying, and he indicated that that is what the manual says. Do you have any reason to disagree with the opinion of Dr. Ewing?
Well, I believe that they're talking about when you make an assessment of malingering, you do a full psychiatric evaluation, which I did, of 14 hours. You also do that screening instrument, And then you look at collateral sources of information, which I gave approximately 30 different sources. So you use all that information together to then support your opinion. Yes, I did that.
Okay, well, all of the experts that have testified have seen all the same exact documentations and sources of data that you have. The question here becomes, that instrument is not to be used in isolation from other psychological instruments. Is that not true?
I don't believe that that's true.
The manual says.
I don't believe that that's true.
And you have the manual with you today.
No.
Now, before meeting Nicole Nachtman and before your interviews of Nicole Nachtman this year in 2019, you clearly had received a lot of sources of data. You reiterated them all to Mr. Terry on direct, correct?
Correct.
And that included that you either had read all of those sources of data that you received, as well as actually speaking with individuals personally. Is that correct?
I didn't do all of that before I saw her. Some of the information I received after I saw her.
So, of the 30 sources of data, and I'll have to go through them, I guess, one by one, of when you received them and when you reviewed them. Your clinical interview with the defendant occurred on 3 separate occasions, so if we can agree on that it was April 30th of 2019,
Yes.
from 9 in the morning until 4 p.m. with a break at 11:45. Does that sound right?
Yes.
May the 15th from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. with a break again.
Yep.
Probably a lunch break, correct?
I was lactating, so that was what I did during that time.
And Ms. Hersey and Ms. Nachtman went to lunch. Is that correct?
Correct.
And on May 28th from 9 a.m. to noon. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so on April 30th being the first date, had you at that point in time received and reviewed the records for Nicole Nachtman, the jail medical records?
Yes. Let me assist you, Attorney Holt. I would say that I had everything up to number 24 by the time I evaluated Nicole. I got 25 forward after.
All right, and so as to not, because we're not sharing this list with the jury, that's okay, and with the court, let me, and you follow along with me. So
Yes.
you received the deposition of Jacqueline Roman that was dated January 29th, 2018, after your evaluation of Nicole.
Yes.
However, the police reports that you had read included an interview of Ms. Roman earlier on, more closer in time to the 2015, correct?
Yes.
All right, the deposition of Taylor Bronson dated October the 3rd of 2017. You received that after your interviews. However, you had also read an interview of Taylor Bronson in the law enforcement documentation that you received, correct?
I don't remember that, actually.
Okay. The deposition of Laura Hessmer dated December 13th, 2017. You received that after your evaluations. However, Laura Hessmer was in fact interviewed by law enforcement in close proximity to the incidents, correct?
Yes.
And then the deposition of Jeffrey Hartman dated December 13th, 2017. Again, you've indicated that you received that after the evaluation.
Yes.
However, you did have an interview of Mr. Hartman from the previous reports or not?
I don't remember his either.
The crime scene diagram, you're indicating that you received that after?
Correct.
The evaluations also?
Yes.
Right. And as to the telephonic interview that you had with Miriam Laird, you did that on July 10th of 2019, approximately 12 days prior to the jury selection process, correct?
I haven't related it to the jury selection process, but it was on July 10th.
And you've previously testified, as a matter of fact, your deposition was about 10 days prior to July 22nd. So yours was about what, July 12th, I think? About 10 days prior to us starting here.
Okay.
And in that deposition, you indicated that you really felt that what Miriam Lear did during her deposition was she kind of glossed over things a lot. As a matter of fact, she's 88 years old. Let me start with that. She's 88 years old, correct?
During my interview, you mean?
No.
You said the deposition, so,
Well, when we deposed you on her interview, you
Correct.
indicated that she kind of glossed over things of how they occurred, correct?
in my estimation, yes, I would say that.
That's not unusual because you're talking about her daughter that is now deceased, correct?
Right, I think that that's her general nature to do that.
And so during the time period that you are evaluating Nicole, you had the benefit of Dr. Heidi's 54-page report, correct?
Oh, yes.
And you also had the defendants, which is filed by the attorneys, of the notice of intent to rely upon the defense of insanity, correct?
Correct.
And you've indicated to Mr. Terry that you testified before on the issue of insanity in the past, correct?
Yes.
You've indicated that you're familiar with the definition of, well, the criteria for insanity as well as the jury instruction for insanity, correct?
I don't know about the jury instruction, I just know the criteria. If what you guys have been presenting this whole time is jury instruction, then I would say yes.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I didn't have any knowledge of that.
So in all the cases that you had testified to previously involving insanity, you had never seen the jury instruction before?
That's
Is that
correct. Yes.
So today, when Mr. Terry showed it to you, would be the first time that you were aware of it?
Yes.
Okay. And you also were in a position and had already had the benefit of reviewing not only the Air Academy school records, but literally also school records from the 3rd grade where another psychological evaluation occurred within the school, correct?
Yes.
And you also had the ability to look at Ms. Nachtman's transcript of grades from FSU, correct?
Yes.
And you had also been able to look at the State of Florida Department of Children and Family reports, as well as an extensive family law court file, correct?
Yes.
And would it be fair and accurate to say that the State of Florida Department of Children and Family reports, as well as the family court file, displayed and made clear to you that there had been a lot of volatility and a lot of hostility and a lot of contentious litigation between Nicole Nachtman's biological father and her biological mother, Miriam Carey Deans?
Yes, ma'am.
And you also had, in the benefit of the psychological evaluations of Nicole's parents through the family court file, as well as the psychological evaluations of Nicole over her from the age of 3 to the Air Academy, you had an opportunity to look at the psychological evaluations for her also, correct?
Yes.
Right. And you also had the benefit of the actual deposition that was taken by Mr. Terry of Dr. Ewing. And so you had all of that information available to you, and you had reviewed it when you went to the evaluations, correct?
No, I didn't get Dr. Ewing's deposition transcript until the day before the deposition in this case. And if you say it was the 12th, then I would say it was the 12th. So that was way after I saw Nicole.
So everything other than Dr. Ewing's that we've talked about, you had the benefit of reviewing.
You had said something right before that I didn't know that I had either. Right before that, but I don't remember what it was.
Psychological evaluations of
I did have
Nicole, her biological parents.
Yes.
And when I say psychological evaluations of Nicole, I'm talking about from the family court file,
Yes.
from 3rd grade,
Yes.
and then the counseling aspect from Air Academy, correct? You had all of that available.
Yes, I did.
Now, you would agree with me that you, based on your training and education and all of the testimony that you've given in this courtroom today, as well as in all the other cases that you've handled, that you know what to look for in terms of a diagnosis of schizophrenia. You know what the manual calls for the symptoms and the diagnosis, correct?
Yes.
All right, and you also know and have indicated that you testified previously as it relates to insanity and what is required before you make a determination one way or the other as a psychiatrist, correct?
Yes.
Now, and you also then would agree with me that as the person that's evaluating Nicole Nachtman at the request of the state attorney's office, who has indicated to you that the diagnosis of that they want a diagnosis of Miss Nachtman, as well as they want your opinion on insanity. You realize and you accept responsibility for having to do a good, thorough, forensic evaluation of Nicole Nachtman, correct?
Yes, but the state attorney didn't ask me to give her a diagnosis. They just asked me to do a forensic psychiatric evaluation, which I did do.
And they wanted you to do what as a result of the forensic evaluation? Land wherever you land?
No, to see whether or not she met the criteria for insanity. That was, yes.
And
that
in
was what,
looking for insanity, you're also going to look for, I'm not to quibble with you, but
No.
the first prong is mental illness or mental defect, which means you're looking for some type of diagnosis to see whether she has it or not, to see whether she qualifies under the first prong, correct?
in every forensic evaluation, that's what I'm looking for. Yep.
Okay. Now, as we indicated, you spent approximately 14 hours with our client. I think you indicated to Mr. Terry that you had no reason to quibble with the 14 hours, correct?
No. That is correct, but I don't have any reason to quibble with that.
Now, did you actually ask Ms. Nachtman whether or not she had had any hallucinations?
No, I don't use the word hallucination because most people that you're evaluating don't know the word hallucination or what it means. I ask, have you ever seen or hear things that other people can't see or hear? That's sort of how I started out. And then I might ask more specific things based upon what they're telling me. In this particular case, given that I knew about these screams, I asked directly about that. But normally, that's the question I usually ask.
Well, at the time, you had the benefit of, well, let me ask you this. You testified that you did not think that Nicole suffered from either hallucinations or delusions. Is that correct?
Correct.
You had the benefit of knowing that there were several people, friends and family members, that indicated to you that not only would they see Nicole talking to herself or mumbling to herself with and without a computer, and you actually also had the benefit of knowing that she had actually had conversations in front of family members where she would be looking at a chair and staring at it. You had the benefit of that, did you not?
No, that is not true.
Okay, let me
I was
ask-
told, or I read, that she was looking down and mumbling to herself one time. I've never spoken with anyone who has ever said that she was talking to herself. And no other depositions have I ever seen and read someone describing what I would consider to be hallucinations.
Well, do you recall reading Eric Lear's deposition?
Yes.
Okay, and you recall that he actually said that she was talking out loud and looking over to the side and going like this and talking, and then she would say, okay, but she wasn't doing that. And that she was looking down and talking to herself or talking under her breath. Do you recall that?
Let me get to that.
And if you want to refer to where I asked you about that, or Ms. Percy O'Gara asked you about that, in your deposition starting on page 30.
I don't have my deposition with me, and I don't have page 30. And I don't have Eric's deposition with me either. I thought I had taken notes on it, but I don't have his actual deposition with me. The volume of pages is extensive. I have just a few pages.
Again, Judge, on my deposition.
You don't need to ask.
Let me see if that refreshes your recollection. If you'll just read it to yourself for a moment.
Yes, I've read my deposition in that part.
Right. And you'll agree with me that it appears that you did in fact have the benefit of what Mr. Lair said, Eric Lair said?
No, that's not what this is talking about, Attorney Holt. What that's talking about is I said, if he had said this, then I would say that's a hallucination, but he did not. So that example I gave there was myself making up an example of what I would believe to be a true hallucination, but he did not indicate that in his deposition.
He did tell you that she was talking to herself in the deposition, correct?
Who said that?
Lair, Eric Lair in his deposition. Yes or no? If you don't recall, feel free to say you don't recall.
Eric Lear said that she was looking down and talking to herself. He did say that in his deposition.
Did you ask Nicole about that? During your 3-day interview,
No, I did not ask her about that specific instance in the restaurant.
and did you, when you realized that you were going to call Miriam Lear and you were going to call Joseph Carey Jr., you did not call Eric Lear or George Lear, who were also family members that were available, in order to learn whether or not perhaps they had seen hallucinations or delusions while they were taking care of Nicole for the majority of her life, correct?
I had specific questions for the two people I called. That is correct.
So the answer is you did not call either of those two individuals to get better clarification from them if you had questions about what was occurring, even though you knew that this case involved insanity.
I had no questions about it. That's why I didn't call him for clarification.
Now, you have your DSM-V with you. If you would turn to the glossary, please.
The
And
DSM-5.
Glossary of terms, specifically page 822.
Yes.
And you were in the courtroom earlier when Ms. Hersey Fulgera covered this with Dr. Ewing.
Of course.
I just wanted you to have it in front of you. You have no reason to
Thank you.
disagree with what Dr. Ewing said was the definition today. Is that correct?
I believe he read it out of here. Correct.
So you have no reason to dispute that what he read is what's in the book at this point, correct?
Correct.
And you also heard him say that auditory hallucinations can come from either the internal location, some internal location within the head, or some external location. Is that correct?
Yes, I heard him say that. Yes.
And you do not disagree with that, correct?
I do disagree with that.
Can I have a moment, Judge?
Yeah.
No rush to go anywhere now, Judge. I'd like to, you have, I think you indicated earlier on direct. You testified earlier on direct that you read, well, you're familiar with the DSM-5, and you also read journals,
Yes?
and you also read publications and all that are certainly cutting edge or to keep up with everything that's going on in your area, correct?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to just show you something and ask you, number one, if you are familiar with this.
Only how I'm familiar with it is because you guys discussed it earlier. I have never read this myself until right now you're presenting this to me.
Okay. Would you... Judge, I'm sorry, because we haven't had an extra copy. Let me just let the state look at it for a moment.
Absolutely.
What I've showed you and what apparently you're familiar with us having discussed with you earlier is Health and Human Services Public Access access treatise in the area of internal versus external auditory hallucinations. Is that correct?
You just showed that to me. Yes.
But you already indicated a couple seconds ago that you're familiar with this because we've discussed it previously and you were in here and you heard it, correct?
I heard you talking with, we have not discussed it. I just heard what he had been presenting with Attorney Hersey.
Right. Well, let me just let you go ahead and take a few minutes for however long you need to peruse and or read what I'm going to mark as Defendant's Exhibit number.
Yeah.
I'm going to approach for a moment, Judge Washington.
What we'll do is we'll take a break in between after Ms. Holt is finished with this witness before we go to a redirect. I think I'm going to interrupt because I just didn't know how long the article was, and it might have been more appropriate to give the jury a break while the doctor is reading the article. So let me just ask the doctor how much more.
It's a 14-page article.
A couple of pages more?
Well, I mean, it's 14 pages, and I'm trying to read through the initial analysis of it.
Ms. Holt, did you want her to read the whole article?
Well, all I'm going to, you want me to approach and tell you what I'm going to ask, and then you can go from there?
I would tell you what, we're going to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you a break. I can see it in your eyes. You need a break. Please do not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Do not do any research related to the case.